Hello again. Now, I did a video a little while ago where I talked about amplifiers and how they work and the various parts within an amp, like the preamp and the power amp and so on. I got a few emails and questions sent through in response to that, so I thought I'd just run through them now because it's a while since I've done like a Q&A sort of video. So here we go. First question came in and someone said, yeah, my amp's got two inputs on it. It's got high input and low input. Basically, why has it got two? What's the difference between them? Which one should I be using? Now, some amplifiers have two inputs on them, and the idea is that they can compensate for the output of your pickups. If you think about like a vintage Strat single coil pickups, they've got a lower output than like a high gain humbucker. So the idea about having like a high input and a low input is if you need to boost the signal of a lower output pickup, or you want to stop a really high output pickup from pushing the amp too far, you can use either a high input or a low input because they've got a different amount of gain before you even get into the preamp. Which one is the right one to use? I would just say let your ears guide you. Try your guitar in both, see which one sounds best to you. There's no hard and fast rule that says you must use a high input or a low input with any particular type of guitar. Okay, next question is from someone who says, I've got a 100-watt combo which is great for gigging, play with a rock band, playing rock and metal, but I've only got the one amp and I struggle to use it for home practice. Any advice? I mean, this is a problem you'll have with a high output amp. Like 100 watts is pretty darn loud. You don't really have the control over the volume at lower volumes because it's designed to be played loud. So if you bring it into a small space like your spare room or your bedroom, and you're trying to control the volume, your volume control's almost like a switch. It goes from silent to really quite loud with just the slightest turn, and then it gets progressively louder from there. Really, for home use, for practice like that, you need a quieter amp. Really, there's no two ways about it. What you've got there with a 100-watt amp is something that's designed, it's designed for gigging. A couple of things you can think about doing though, if you really want to have that amp and keep your sound from that amp, whether you're using it for home practice or gigging or whatever, is to look at something like a power soak. If you can put something in between the power amp and the speakers just to take some of the volume away, or if you can have a look at the back of your amp, if it's got something like an emulated out. A headphone jack really isn't going to cut it because that gives you the full range of frequencies and it'll sound really horrible and fizzy. But if you've got something like an emulated output, there might be some electronics in the back of the amp that actually emulate the sound of a speaker and take a lot of the top end out that a guitar speaker doesn't normally produce. I did another video a little while ago where I talk about speaker emulation and so on, so I'll put a link down there for you in the information section on YouTube if you want to follow that. But like I say, you've got a fairly common problem there that you're trying to use a gigging amp for home use, and it's just not intended for that. It's basically uncontrollably loud. Also, on the subject of amp output, so the opposite kind of question is, my amp has a great sound, copes well for home use, band use, and most of the gigs that I play it's quite adequate, but some venues I find it's just not quite loud enough. I really like the amp sound, I don't particularly want to change it for something louder, but I need more volume. Is there any way I can boost the volume out of the amp? Well, you can't really boost it. If you've got the amp at full whack, it's producing a particular amount of volume. Amp power is measured in watts, so I'm guessing you've probably got something that's like a 15-watt or 20-watt amp. Maybe it's a little bit more. Whether the amp's got valves or transistors, sometimes it makes a difference to how much volume you get per watt. But what you could think about is how, not so much the volume, but how you can project the sound, because you're saying you're finding the problem at certain venues, and I'm going to guess it's because of the acoustics in the venue. If you look at amps that come in two basic forms, you get the combo, where you've got the amp and the speaker built into one box, or you get the stack, where you've got the amp on the top and then speaker cabinets underneath. And those stacks would come in things like 4x12s, two 4x12s, 4x10, you know, where that's talking about the number of speakers and how big the speakers are. So a 4x12 cabinet has four 12-inch speakers in it. And this is important because the number of speakers and the surface area of those speakers helps to project the sound. So it won't actually make it sound any louder, but it'll push the sound out more effectively. So have a think about so let me use an extension cabinet for your amplifier, because I'm guessing from your question that it's a combo if it's lower output. You know, think about maybe seeing if you can get a speaker cabinet, say 4x12 or something like that, that's really going to project the sound. Important thing to note on speaker cabinets is to make sure that they can cope with the output from your amp. You know, if you've got a 50 watt amp and you've got some speakers that are only rated for 20 watt, when you turn the volume up, you'll break the speakers pretty quickly. So you need speakers that are rated for the power that your amp puts out. You know, if you've got a 50 watt amp, you can plug in some speakers that are rated for 100 watt and they'll be quite okay. What you aren't going to have is 100 watts out of 100 watt speakers. You can only have as many watts as your amp can put out. But those what I'm saying is that the speakers will cope with the power output because they're rated for something higher, and because you've got more speakers, they'll project the sound out more. Also be careful about the impedance. There'll be something on the output from the back of your amp saying it's rated at 8 ohms or 16 ohms or whatever. You need to make sure that the speakers are the same impedance. Okay. Next question is about sound. This question is, I love the sound that AC/DC's Angus Young gets, and I'm trying to get similar sound out of my own amp. I want very, very slight overdrive. My amp, all the amps I've tried, the distortion channel or the dirty channel has got too much gain. I want something much less gain, much tighter. Any tips for getting that Angus Young sound? Well, what you've got to remember, and I've said this in other videos, is your favourite guitarist's sound is a combination of the guitar, any effects that they're using, the amp, speakers, but most importantly it's them. It's the way they hold the guitar, the way that the fingers work on the strings, pick and everything. So you're probably never going to be able to perfectly emulate Angus Young's sound, but you'll be able to get a decent approximation of it. It'll sound like you getting an Angus Young sound, if you know what I mean. And I think the problem you're running into is if you're trying the dirty channel on an amp, they do tend to go more into full-on overdrive quite quickly. What you might want to do is look at either a 3-channel amp where you've got a clean, a crunch and a dirty channel, because that crunch channel's got less aggressive overdrive. Maybe you can control it a little bit more, so you've got that just driven sound. Alternatively, you could try getting a dirty sound out of the clean channel. I'll show you what I mean. This is my amp set up just on the clean channel, and limited, just look down my board there, no real effects on at the moment. Okay, now one pedal that I've got down here is a boost. Now it's not an overdrive pedal. An overdrive pedal will give you an overdriven sound in the pedal, and then there's an overdriven sound comes out into the amp. What I've got down here is a boost. And what a boost does is it basically increases the volume of the signal as it goes into the amp, and that causes the amp to overdrive just a little bit more. And I find this is a lot more controllable for giving me a little bit of crunch on the clean channel. I'll show you what I mean. With the boost pedal switched in, the guitar now sounds like this. So what's happening there is there's more signal going into the clean channel on the amplifier than the preamp can actually handle, and the signal's starting to break up. It's the same basic principle as you have in an overdrive, but in this case, rather than an overdriven sound coming out of the boost pedal, all you're getting is just more clean signal, and then that's breaking up in the clean channel on the amplifier. So if you want, get yourself down to the local music store and try out a boost pedal or two through the clean channel on an amplifier, and you might find that you get the sound that you're looking for. I mean, generally boosts are quite a useful thing to have, either for pushing your clean channel a bit more, or for just pushing a little bit more dirt into an already overdriven sound. If you're interested, the pedal I'm using down here is the Black Star LT Boost, which I picked up recently and I'm really enjoying. Really nice pedal. Last question is from someone who's saying, why are valve amps so well thought of and so expensive when really they're old technology? Why aren't amplifiers nowadays using modern things like transistors, across the board? And it's true, valves are an old technology, but there's a lot of debate amongst guitarists as to what sounds better, a valve amp, tube amp as it's sometimes called, or something solid state that uses transistors. Basically, a lot of people think that valve amps just sound better, the more natural sounding overdrive, more pleasing sound, and people like them, and that's why the valve amps are still around. And there's a lot of engineering goes into them to give you that best possible overdrive sound, and that's why they're kind of expensive. There's a kind of a compromise now called like a modelling amp, where they use very sophisticated electronics to mimic the sound of a valve amp within something purely solid state, and that gives you the benefit of not having all the glass of the valves in the amp, so maybe it's not as fragile, and your valves don't wear out and need replacing. But it's purely subjective. Some people will just argue that valve amps sound better and that's all they're ever going to use. Other people go the other way and they're quite happy to use transistors. It's one of those things, personal opinion. Okay, so there's a few questions and answers about amplifiers. As always, if you've got any questions or you want a bit more information about anything that I cover in a video, feel free to either send me a private message or an email, or just post something down there in the comment section on YouTube or on the PhatPhish Facebook page, and I'll either get back to you with an answer direct, or if it's something interesting I think other people might like to hear, I might use it as a subject for a future video on YouTube and put your answer out to a wider audience. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video soon. Bye for now.